So in this movie, Jonathan Majors plays the villain Kang. What? Sorry? Oh, no? Different movie. Oh, okay. Great. So they did it, guys. They made a Creed 3 like I thought they might. And let me just say, it's actually not that bad. It's actually a pretty good movie. If you haven't watched any of my Rocky reviews with my dad, then you would know that I'm actually a huge fan of this franchise. My dad raised me on Rocky. I grew up on Star Wars and Rocky and a bunch of other things, but Rocky was always one of those things that was always on TV. I have all the movies on Blu-ray. My dad had them all on DVD at one point, so Rocky was a big part of our lives, and if you haven't had a chance to have a look at our reviews, go and check them out. They're on my channel in a playlist. But to get straight into it, this movie is actually pretty good. My excitement for this movie wasn't as much as Creed 2 because this is a whole new story they're telling. They're not going back to something that would obviously affect Adonis in a major way. Like, this movie is telling its own story. It's introducing a new character played by Jonathan Majors. And I haven't reviewed Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania because I haven't reviewed a lot of other Marvel movies or shows, which I will eventually. But Jonathan Majors is proving himself to be a great villain on screen. He was fantastic as Kang. He is fantastic here as the character's name I can't remember. Anyway, whatever. My brain's just not working. So he does such a great job as these characters. He's very menacing and he brings such a presence on screen. And he is menacing in this movie, but there's a lot more heart given to his character. This movie explores and sets up this villain, I guess you could say, or the opponent that Adonis has to fight in a much better way than really any of the Rocky movies did before. And I'm noticing this a lot more with each release of a Creed movie. Creed 1, Creed 2, and now Creed 3. The opponents are set up in much more extensive ways. They flesh them out like real characters more than any of the Rocky movies did, because you did have Apollo Creed, who was the opponent, and he's really the only one that they spent a lot of time on. Every other opponent was just an opponent for Rocky. Besides Apollo, that was pretty much it. From the first scene in this movie, I am invested. I am wanting to know what's going to happen with these two characters. They did such a good job. And not to mention, it's directed by Michael B. Jordan, which is his first time directing a movie, or at least a feature film. So, in my opinion, he did such a good job directing this movie. There's nothing else I can really say about the direction for this movie. It's done incredibly well. And Michael B. Jordan takes us to locations and has sets and does things in this movie which are a bit more experimental considering the past Creed and Rocky movies. But this movie tried to do things a little differently. And in some cases, it doesn't work. But in most cases, I think it actually does. Adonis, like the last movie, is pushed to his breaking point, but this one does it in a very different way. Where Creed 2 was a callback to Apollo Creed and everything that happened there, this one is a callback to Adonis's actual childhood growing up and everything that happened there, which was not built up or referenced to in the previous two movies. It's just a new story that they're trying to tell. But I did mention there were some things that were different, and some of the things that are different is the fact that both Adonis and the Jonathan Majors, I can't remember the character's name, they slow down the footage to see their opponent moving. Like, if they're going for a punch, they slow down the footage so that either Adonis or Jonathan Majors' character can analyze what's about to happen. That was very cool and not done before. So that was one of the new things that they tried out in this movie that I think they should do more of. They should try to experiment more with the Creed movies. Because like Fast and Furious did, as I'm currently reviewing on my channel, that franchise realized that it needed to, change some things, experiment a bit, and so has Marvel and Star Wars and a bunch of other franchises. So I think if this franchise is to keep going and succeed, they need to try things a little differently. Mission Impossible also changed things up, did it a little differently. But that being said, there is one sequence in this movie that I did not like, that was a bit more experimental, but I just think it didn't work for this type of movie. And I don't want to spoil too much of it, because if you haven't seen it, then I will spoil it for you, but the chances are if you're watching this video you've already seen it anyway, so I'm going to slightly go into it. So when Adonis and Jonathan Majors were fighting, they tried to make it more of a mental fight, and how they displayed that on screen was interesting at first, but then I think it just went a bit too long, and I don't know, it just wasn't as interesting as I guess they thought that they were trying to make it. I don't know, it felt a bit weird after a while. Maybe if you're gonna do something like that, make it a little shorter. But regardless of that, you know, minor nitpick I've had, I really have no issues with this movie besides that little tiny nitpick. It was a very it had a very investing story between Adonis and Jonathan Majors' character. But yeah, I was very satisfied with you know, the journey that this film took us on with their backstory and then the conclusion at the end. I thought was nice. Yeah, I really like this movie. But let me just go off this movie for a second because I do have something to say. If you are someone who has watched my previous Rocky reviews with my dad and the other 2 Creed movies, then you're probably wondering why he's not in this video. Because we did say when we reviewed Creed 2 that we would be back to review Creed 3 if they ever decided to do it. And they did, and he's not here to do the video. And in one of my other previous Fast and Furious reviews, I think for Fast and Furious 6, I was talking about my dad a little in the past tense. Because, yes, my dad has now unfortunately passed away. It's been not even a year. But, yeah. I thought I would say something for this video specifically because I did all those reviews with him. And we did say we would be back for Creed 3, and he's not here for it. So, if any of you were wondering why that is why. But besides that, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure he would have loved it. In fact, I know he would have loved it. He would have been all over this movie. But in any case, I will see you in my next review for the next Creed movie, if they ever decide to make a 4th one, which they probably will. Anyway, that is my review for Creed 3. I will see you in my next Creed review whenever that will be. And for those watching my Fast and Furious reviews, I'll see you in my next Fast and Furious review. Every other opponent was pretty much just an opponent. Fuck, I can't speak. Adonis... Oh, what's this in my pocket? A napkin. I'm just gonna fucking look his name up. Damien. What the fuck? That's the easiest name to remember.